What on earth is Bradford Breakthrough, you're asking? It's a networking and advocacy group of senior leaders of both private sector and public sector organisations here in Bradford. I'm also a media consultant. I have a couple of non-executive directorships, and this is one of the advantages of chairing a session is you get the opportunity to plug something, of course. And I did write a book last year, which is relevant. It's called A Place in History. It's all about the impact. It's all about places where key news events happened in Britain in the 20th century and the impact on those places and what's happened to them since. And if you're interested in it, there are a couple of reference copies outside to have a look at. I used to be the director of this museum, and prior to that, I worked for the BBC for far, far too many years, although it was overwhelmingly a good experience. So that's me. Can I first of all just echo the various welcomes of my Bradford colleagues earlier to this great auditorium, which, by the way, David Putnam, Lord Putnam, once described as the most beautiful cinema in England, and I don't think he was far wide of the mark. Welcome also to this great National Museum and, of course, to the great city of Bradford, and we're delighted that you've chosen Bradford for your Congress. Talking of choosing Bradford, one of my favourite stories, an entirely true story from the time I was director here, concerned the corporate hire department, the team that tries to sell this place as a venue for conferences and corporate events. And one day they took a call from a very well-known international organisation wanting to hold a conference. They were very keen, they asked for the bump, and they made a provisional booking. And then a few weeks later they rang to confirm the arrangements and said, we're just getting the information together, want to send stuff out to our delegates. And just want to check one thing. Can you tell us which is the nearest tube station to the museum? They had assumed that something called the National Media Museum must be in London. But as you can see, the National Media Museum isn't in London, it's in Bradford. The world's first UNESCO City of Film wasn't London, or Mumbai, or even Cannes. It was Bradford. And as Zulfi mentioned earlier, the World Curry Festival is happening right here in Bradford. And this is, I firmly believe, a resurgent city with international connections and ambitions. And importantly, I think we are all starting to turn around both the reality and the perception of Bradford. And one of the key things that Bradford Breakthrough is concentrating on at the moment is to try and take the lead in trying to turn around some of the media perceptions about Bradford. And in fact, yesterday, you may not have realised it, but accompanying you were a number of journalists that Bradford Breakthrough invited. And we piggybacked your event, I'm very grateful for that, to just show them some aspects of life in Bradford and Bradford's plans for the future. So I think this is a city on the move, but back to the Congress and today. And this session is entitled Changing Economics, the Creation of Producer Cities. We heard earlier from Barra about the vision for the next 10 years and beyond for Bradford. The vision, as you heard, is of Bradford as the producer city. Producer, of course, not just meaning producer in the manufacturing sense, but in terms of services, ideas, culture as well. The purpose of this session is to kick that idea around a bit, to examine it, to test it, and try to see what lessons can be learned from elsewhere. And I'm delighted to have two distinguished keynote speakers to help guide us through this. Stuart Gulliver is Emeritus Professor at the University of Glasgow, internationally recognised practitioner in economic development and urban regeneration, former Chief Executive of the Glasgow Development Agency and Director of Development of the Scottish Development Agency. He's worked as a strategic economic advisor to many British cities, and he's currently working, amongst other things, with the World Bank in St Petersburg. Michael Ward is now a freelance consultant and he chairs the board of the Centre for Local Economic Strategies, CLES. He's a former director of CLES, former chief exec of the London Development Agency, and earlier in his career he was a politician, but we'll forgive him for that, including serving, I think, as deputy leader of the late GLC. We'll be hearing from Michael later. There will be an opportunity for questions and discussion after each of our speakers.